Hello and a warm welcome to everyone to Pack Talks. It's been a good long break, and it's great to bring back someone who has been doing some amazing work and a different field, not the one that you listen on a regular basis. It's a Jungle Book story that we are going to listen today. Bringing on board Manju Vasudevan. She has been doing some exemplary work with the people based in the forest areas. Welcome, Manju. Welcome to the show, and let's hear from you.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you. You're going to get the hopes of your listeners very high with all that heavy introduction, Jungle Book, and all that.
Yeah, you deserve that. So before we talk about the Jungle Book story, which is your uh, entrepreneur journey in terms of with the forest post and things like that, we will take a step back and understand Manju Vasudevan, who she is and what's the journey been for you. So tell us a little bit about yourself from what's your background and what you have been doing before this.
Okay. I am a trained ecologist. So, ever since I finished my master's in ecology, I've been mostly in the field of research. And I've worked only with NGOs. I have handled projects with all sorts of international funding wherever I was based. And to be noted is the fact that all ecological research is usually done with the guidance of a tribal person, or what we call indigenous Adivasi person, because they are the ones who know the forest and they know where what is flowering, what is fruiting, where is the hornbill nesting and whatnot. But yeah, that stays in the background. I continued this for about 15 years, more than that actually. I also dabbled a little in travel writing, some bit of volunteering, nature education. I was part of river ecology workshops, all kinds of things, So, and in our times, people used to volunteer a lot, and I think I've done that a lot. Yeah, that's that's the journey before Forest Post. But yeah,
Okay,
when
so I will just make it a little bit more interesting for the listeners. So you just put it in a very humble way in terms of saying that you have done your masters in ecologist and stuff like that. So if you can just explain a little bit in terms of from where you did your masters and stuff like that.
Okay, so in India, you only have a couple of places that offer ecology and wildlife biology. I did this in Pondicherry University. Then I worked a few years in ATRI and FRLHT and NGOs in India that work on ecology and conservation broadly. Then, while I was at Keystone, well, during that I went for a PhD at Imperial College London. Again, the subject was pollination. I studied habitats, bees, bee diversity in canopies. So I actually ended up climbing trees and looking at bees up in the canopy, which was really adventurous. But then I came back to this NGO called Keystone Foundation, where I worked for a couple of years, then went for a postdoc at UCSB, University of California, Santa Barbara. Worked with an amazing professor called Susan Mazer. We did some work across California on looking at seeds and seed diversity and conserving seeds, wild seeds. Again, I get back, and somehow I thought academics was great. I mean, that's what I'm trained in. But I found something missing. I think that's where that transition happened. And it happened also because I started working for Keystone, where I saw a lot of this interface with communities and conservation. So, you see, in India, there's a huge argument. There's always a debate between people who are exclusive conservationists who want to keep people out and keep tiger reserves, and it's called exclusive. The other model is inclusive conservation, where you involve people in conservation. They have been living, coexisting with wildlife for centuries. There's no reason to chuck them out of these forest areas, while at the same time you're the state is funding huge mining projects and dam projects, and that's where the real threat is. People are not a threat. So I think that debate is something I understood really well while I was at Keystone, and I saw the strength of community-based conservation. I think that also while I was at Keystone, I was doing a research funded by Food and Agricultural Organization, Critical Ecosystems Partnership Fund. All of this is very ecology oriented studies. We were working on pollinator habitats, we were doing bee nesting surveys, looking at pollinators of coffee, all kinds of things. Again, pure research, but around me, I had people who were working on community based conservation. There was a lot of interaction with indigenous people while I was at Keystone, and I think that was, in a way, I wouldn't say it was a turning point because I was still very comfortable doing research. But then I moved to Kerala with River Research Center. It's a grassroots NGO where we tried to replicate the model that Keystone was doing with communities at the center, with enterprise building of forest products with women's groups. So that's where that whole shift happened. If, I don't know if I'm jumping your question, but that's where it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's start talking about Forest Post. So what was the threshold in terms of deciding that, okay, let's go and do this? And yeah, what was the final trigger point which made you decide, let's get going with this?
That's actually still a little way to go. You know what happened? So I moved to Kerala. We run this project funded by Gaga, which is called the Global Action for Gender and Green Global Alliance for Gender and Green Action. It's called Gaga. It's based in Netherlands, and they were funding Keystone, and they were funding through Keystone, several small grassroots organizations were working, and we had started work on this enterprise building. And then too, it was a pure NGO project mode. You know how NGOs function? You
Yeah.
carry on, it's a project mode. Your project is over, okay, you're on to the next project. But here, what happened was we had ended up training about 20 or 30 women across 4 or 5 villages during the span of that project, which was about 3.5 to 4 years, 2016 to before COVID. And the project was over. Gaga was telling us that, they're winding up, and I'd applied for a Department of Science and Technology grant through the NGO I was part of to see if that work could be taken forward. Um, and but then that year, COVID had struck, and I think a lot of funding had been cut off from central government. They wrote to us saying a lot of money is going to be diverted to COVID relief. And so then I thought, okay, now what, So, but now around the same time, 2021, so for almost 8 to 10 months, I had carried on as a volunteer, continued supporting these women. And, mind you, there was no forest post at that time. There were these women's groups, they had products, we were trying to connect them to local markets. Kudumbashri and Vanashri, those who understand the India context, it's got to do with the National Rural Livelihoods Mission, the state Kudumbashri Mission, which is a women's enterprise model. We were exploring multiple things and we had not branded anything. So there were baskets and mats from this one village. We were trying to take it to exhibitions and things like that. There were soaps and body butters made of beeswax, which we tried taking through these other channels. Nothing was formal, nothing was streamlined. It was very, very ad hoc, in a way disturbing also, because women are not really earning a lot through this kind of haphazard sale model. Around that time, UNDP's India High Range Mountain Landscape Project, it's called the IHRML. If you look it up, you'll find it. They approached our office, in fact, me, because I was leading this project at River Research Center, and they said, Ki, you guys are doing all this, and the products are being bought by people abroad. It's been appreciated so much. You put in so much into the quality of the products. Why is it that you are not thinking of registering a formal business? Because to actually do business, you need to be a business entity, right? And my first reaction was no. I mean, I was very diffident. It's not like I have business in my background or my heritage or anywhere. I'm completely new to this, and I brushed off the idea. And they were persistent. They said, but there's so much potential. There are all these other 200 groups in central Kerala that we're trying to support to take them to the next level. So they gave us examples of a Mario Tribal Welfare Society. They were doing honey and stuff like that, and they were going to build a store for them. To us, they said they would help us with a management consultant and a brand strategist and create something, because I was there and it looked to them that I could actually do the storytelling part of it, convey it. And I'm not a tribal person. I can speak in English. I can maybe bridge between the community and an urban customer. And therefore, the brand strategist felt that some of the names we suggested were in Malayalam, names like Adavi, which actually stand for forest in the Kadar language. And she said, the brand strategist was like, it'll be good to have an English name because people will talk to you, they'll know you as somebody who's worked in the forest, and maybe later they'll try and recollect it and say, hey, something to do with the forest, right? And they might search, and this is how it should be. Forest has to be there in the brand name, is what she strongly recommended. And again, we went through all kinds of names. And, we one day I said to her, I still write letters. I always carry paper and postcards in my book when I'm off to some remote area because that's where you have a lot of time. And I said to her, if I ever had a blog, I would call it Postcards from the Forest. And she caught on to that. And she said, give me 24 hours and I'm coming back to you with something exciting. And they came up with this brand name and a series of 42 different stamp illustrations, each one representing a plant that is being used in the value addition. Say it's a pickle or a jam or any of our products is usually a forest product, right? Even beeswax is a forest product. So then that name happened, and by then everything happened almost overnight. I didn't even have time to think. We were registered. We had a website up in about 3 months. The website was ready. Really, Vijay, I did not know what was happening. The pace was just very difficult to catch up with. Before you realize you have this thing on your head, and you're like, okay, am I supposed to carry this forward? So actually, there wasn't much time to think, even I would say. But the key point is that the women really wanted this. So I spoke to them. I said, look, there is such an offer that we convert it to a business entity. What do you women feel? In one of my women's groups, where it's very active, they were doing soaps and body butters and stuff like that. They said, yeah, Manju, if you're with us, let's take it to the next level. And that kind of gave me a little bit of also, you feel responsible. You don't want to abandon something that you did for 4 years. What next was anyway a huge challenge. We had by then approached NABARD, we had approached all the other MSME options, but because our women are scattered in the geography, it wasn't possible to have them in one panchayat as a one farmer producer company, which was a huge delimitation for us. What are we going to do then if we can't form a farmer producer company, right? Because those are the models you see around you that have worked in India, and they've worked well. And so it looked like this UNDP offer and the support that came from them made sense at that point, and we went ahead with it. So that's how Forest Post was born, 2021 July. This is 5 years after the work began. 2016 is when we started the work with the women, the various communities, very distinct communities. We couldn't do the same thing in all the villages. We were doing different things in different villages. Yeah, so sorry.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So now let's get talking about Forest Post. So people who have been listening, who have been listening to the whole thing. What is Forest Post? and what exactly do you bring out with the help of all these communities?
Mm. Okay, so I wish I could show you the map that we usually share at these talks for students
I'll
and
add to
things.
the article when I write
It
it. Yeah.
actually shows all the different villages in the Periyar River Basin. We work only in central Kerala, largely. We do support two other groups in Tamil Nadu and Andamans, but we don't have a direct intervention there. But so what we do is what is called non-timber forest produce or minor forest produce is things like honey, beeswax, medicinal plants, berries, all sorts of things that are not timber but are valuable for forest dwellers. Now, a lot of Adivasis in the Western Ghats or across India, if you go to Eastern India, Chhattisgarh, are actually dependent on sales from these minor forest products for their basic livelihood. A lot of them are not farmers. Some Buduvas in our villages, they do cultivate coffee and pepper, but largely, if you look at the whole spectrum of NTFP in India, minor forest product, you will find that there is a dependency, economic dependency. Now, often what happens is this, when it reaches the market, like any other producer, whether it's even a farming agricultural producer, a producer doesn't have the control over the price. He can't always negotiate the price, whatever the market price is. And in this case, these people hire jeeps to go down all the way three hours down into the valley, into the nearest town to sell something. Only in one of our villages, there is another town closer to Valpare where they might be able to sell some stuff. But that also means that their cost is added there. Their expenditure is higher when they're trying to sell something. So we looked at everything that was not being procured by the forest department, because the Kerala forest department actually pays a very good price for honey and a few other things. So we didn't want to get into honey at that point. Our objective was not to disrupt something that's going well, right? If it's going well, it's great. What else is not going well? Where is all this money going? Is it only the men who are getting all this money? Why don't we do what Keystone was doing, right? This is what we were doing from 2016. So the idea was you have things like beeswax, wild edibles like amla and wild grapes, and ancient foods like queen sago and arrowroot, which have been which needed revival from our end. We had to incentivize these communities and say, look, you bring this, we will buy this from you. And in the adjacent village, this was a Kada community, in the adjacent village, the women would do the value addition, whether it's pickling or powdering it into a flour format or whatever, or a preserve. Sometimes they made jams and things. So you've heard of beeswax, you've heard of wild edibles. We were already also working in the bamboo village where the craft is a traditional craft. These are women who are traditional weavers. They did baskets and mats, and one of their mats, in fact, when my boss from River Research Center was alive, she's no more now. We used to dream of a day when Kannadi Paya, that particular weave, will have a GI tag, and today it has a GI tag. So these were the three broad NTFP based product lines that we curated: beeswax skincare products. Along that came a few hair care products on uh, hair care, and there's a lot of Ayurvedic. You've heard of that, like people use hair oils. There's a lot around that. So the women here also had their recipes that they shared. So you had beeswax cosmetics, hair oils, you had wild edibles, and bamboo craft. This was it. But then what happened was we were engaging with young women who were not necessarily forest dependent. We didn't also want to romanticize it. Let's admit it, some of them don't want to go to the forest. They're more aspirational. They wanted their children to go to school, so they were closer to the town or whatever. With them, what we did was we taught them macrame and crochet. Again, friends chipped in. All of this that you see in Forest Post is simply the goodwill of friends and, well-wishers. So friends chipped in, they came and gave trainings. So we created, at that point, it looked like, what is sustainable about this? These are nylon threads that they were crafting into little accessories, jewelry, necklaces, and things like that. But luckily, there too, we were able to bring in some really, really beautiful. We have something called the sea bean, which is a beautiful little tortoise or a sea turtle kind of a thing, crafted with macrame knotting techniques. And that actually kind of symbolifies the work we do, because, Vijay, this particular seed, like I said earlier, would fetch them 3 to 4 rupees in the market. So a whole bunch of it, 1 kilogram, would fetch them 60 to 65 rupees. If you count them, ki one would cost you 3 or 4 rupees. Now, with the women who were able to collect it were in the upper catchment. They were in Edamalayar and Sholayar, and they did not know macrame. But we said, nevertheless, let's get it from a community, pass it on to this other community in Marayur. There, they could do this. So we promised them 10 rupees as against 3 rupees, because then the expenditure of thread and the actual labor of crafting, the girl who does it would get that. So the difference is the girl who crafts it would get about 250 rupees, 240 rupees. Now, imagine the girl who actually picks the seed learning this craft. She is able to get not 3 rupees but 250 rupees, right? So that difference actually brings us a lot of hope that, okay, if you monitor their incomes across a year, all of these women, it'll vary. Women in the soap production unit have a different kind of income. Women in the basketry village are on a per piece rate. They will give you 30 baskets. Individuals are getting that. It's not a group activity. Women like this who do craft, the sea bean turtle, for example, they also get money like that. So if you look at their incomes, you can see these craftswomen are actually doing well in the last few years. Say 3 years we've been monitoring this because we've been registered for a while now. We can, we all our stuff is audited and we look at all our costs and everything. So that way it's very promising to see. And anyway, so the subject is that, yeah, Forest Post has all these curated products under these 4 or 5 categories. Very high wellness index products, pure products. People who are looking out for organic, for that matter, could easily, you know, bump into this and be happy because this is purer than organic. It's from the forest. So that exists, and that, I mean, of course, there's a long way to go with marketing and finding new channels and all that. We're really small right now. We are still dependent on grants. Mm, but yeah, I think Forest Post is starting to have an identity beyond just the brand image, but the products, people recognize it, people come back for it. If you look at our Google reviews, you'll see. So all that is promising, because what do we want at the end of the day? We want our women to have more days of work, right? Otherwise this whole exercise is futile if we are not able to grow. So, and as for me, we need a team as well. Right now we are quite thin, we're not a full team, so that also would be good to have an actual team with people doing things that they're comfortable doing. Like my brain is not wired for numbers. It's very challenging for me to look at accounts and cash flow and things like that. But if there was somebody in the team who was comfortable doing that, life would be so much. I could focus on communities or networking or talking to people like you. And, I could just feel more relieved. And yeah, I mean, yeah. As we speak, I have a sales and marketing business person joining us this week. So that's, yeah.
Superb, superb. So that's some amazing work. So how many Adivasis or the communities are you working with currently?
About 75 to 78. Yeah, around that number.
Okay, okay. And How often do you meet them?
Uh, I meet one group or the other every week, or sometimes there are months where I am meeting only them and there's nothing else. Like there is no sale event, there are no business events, so I spend more time in the community. I'd say at least in every 5 days, I would have met one or the other community.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you speak about, you mentioned that you are focused at the Periyar catchment area. So how big is that? And if you look at in terms of segregating that into, say, different locations, how many locations would you look at in within that range?
So when I say Periyar, I've included the Chalakudi River basin because Chalakudi falls into Periyar. So our original work started in the Chalakudi River basin. So you have upstream, you go up to Malakapara where the bamboo villages are, and then you come down to Varachala, Tripoli waterfalls, and slightly to the north would be Chimney Wildlife Sanctuary and these places. That's actually Karuvannur River Basin. But what happened in the upstream of Chalakudi River Basin is one of our villages is in Edamalayar, which is a reservoir. So it actually falls in the Malayatur Forest Division. Now this is for Varachal Forest Division. Down, if you look at the map, it's Chalakudi. Then further up is Varachal Forest Division, and then slightly northeast is your Edamalayar, which is in the Malayatur Forest Division. Turns out that later in the last 2 years, since we had started working in that one basketry village, there was interest from the forest department to invite us as trainees to actually reach out to 4 or 5 more villages in their jurisdiction, which for which the access would be places like Tattekad, Tattekad Bird Sanctuary. So you to actually, if a crow were flying from Varchal, Edamalayar, you could just go across the Edamalayar Reservoir. So I once remember I was coming back from this other new village, which is on the other side of Edamalayar, and I had to do this long trip, Perumbavoor and Tattekad, and change a bus somewhere and all that. And then at some point, the forest department jeep picked me up. But the next day, I think I was in my village. When I say is because I've been there for 6 years, it feels like home, right? So I came back here. I was walking down and I bumped into the tribal chieftain, and I said, "You know where I was 2 days ago? I was in this particular village. I met some of your relatives because they are also Moduvas." And he was laughing. He said, "You took a bus all the way around to go there. You could have just crossed over the reservoir. We could have taken you in the Pondi. Pondi is these round coracle boats." I said, "Yeah, right. You couldn't have taken me. You'd have needed permission from the forest department and whatnot." But the point is, it's as close geographically, these places. But I think when the reservoir was built, these villages, which were low, would have moved upward. Some would have moved to this side of the reservoir, some would have moved to the other side. And that's why they don't meet as much as they would like to. They still get married between these hamlets, but travel is a pain. You have to go all around. You have to come down the hill, then go up the hill from another side. You see what I'm saying? So, and there are no roads where the actual reservoir is. So you have to come down the national highways and then go up. So that's I mean, for somebody interested in geography, this is a good exercise. And when we were part of River Research Center, Vijay, we used to do these exercises for children to familiarize with latitude and longitude. So I had a friend called Sunny. She's a naturalist. She's based in Germany now, doing his research on fire ecology. Amazing guy, amazing naturalist. So he had actually conceived a game where the child is given the latitude longitude points just in a column, like two columns of latitude and longitude, and a graph. And the child learns to plot it. And the plotting is actually the formation of a river. The journey of a river, say from upstream, where I said Valpare, Parambikulam, these places, Chalakudi, come down all the way to Chalakudi and then join Periyar or whatever. So these kind of things, I mean, I guess, in school we don't learn geography like this, no? So, but I am paying more attention to geography. I'm so glad you asked that question about the layout of these villages. How difficult it would be to actually have one farmer producer company and expect all these women to actually come for even one meeting. They wouldn't come for that one meeting. Even in the village, if you call for meetings, they have hazard excuses. They will say, "Oh, aaj ye hai, wo hai. I have a wedding." But they still come. What I'm saying is, some other landscape coming 3 hours into some other location for a meeting, it would have never happened. It's very easy for people who look at it from outside and say, "Why did you do it this way or the other way?" I'm sure there are many ways of doing a certain thing, but I didn't want to look like a private business entity. This was the last thing I had ever dreamt of. But if this is one way of doing it, then let's try to do it properly with as much, clarity and transparency and ethics and everything. I mean, being an ecologist, I'm very aware of how much you can harvest something from a given region. There are calls we answer every year around monsoon for a fruit called the mooti fruit. How many kilograms would you like? How many sacks would you like? And you have to tell them, no, 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 we're not taking this at all, because our women will make a beautiful jam out of it. We did this once with forest department, but I personally felt that it's much loved by elephants and deer, and there's no need for everything to be sold. If you look at our wild edibles profile, a lot of it is stuff that grows abundant and was neglected. These are called unconventional minor forest products. Ferns, we make a pickle out of ferns. Nobody would care for it. No wildlife is dependent on a fern, right? Things like that. So that 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 whole some way of looking at it is, I think, it's learning. It's also very learning when you go with these women. They tell you more about these things, especially elder women. It's fascinating. It's just, yeah, yeah.
Amazing. So, when I listen to the longitude, latitude, and everything, so for the current generation or the generation which comes up, coming up, for them it's Mission Impossible and Ethan Hunt and Tom Cruise who show the longitude, latitude. They go to the location and they solve missions, and this is very similar to that in terms of what you're doing. So it's very interesting. So at least the generation would understand when you say longitude, latitude, and stuff like that. Just that the perspective and the things that you're doing, it's completely different. That's it.
Yeah.
I'll bring back you to the forest postings. So you mentioned that you have beeswax cosmetics and the crafts and other things. So if I have to count the number of products that you have under forest post, how many products you will have currently?
We have almost 100 SKUs. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good base. And
Yeah.
so is the marketing team, the brand agency is still helping you with putting together the creatives or in terms of suggesting how you want to do it and stuff like that, or it was just a one-time
No,
assignment that they picked up?
that was a one time. That was actually a one time assignment, and UNDP hired them for us. They left us with all the brand guidelines, and then whoever would help us with, say, future products, labeling. We did think of who would do digital marketing for us, but back then we didn't invest in that. In the second, I was managing it on my own. And then in the second year, we hired somebody. In the third year, we had a grant from Kerala Startup Mission, which was exclusively to focus on marketing. So we were able to continue with that same social media team, which is handling our Instagram and all that. So they're very familiar with the brand guidelines and the language and the tone of our posts. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And when you bring a product to the market, okay, all said and done, you have the story and everything is there. but then out there in the market, you're competing with any other brand. So and since you spoke about the monetary thing and the cost calculation that happens behind, in terms of the normal 3 rupee that a person gets, and then you are helping them to actually make maybe a 10 or a 250 from that. So you are adding on to that cost and taking the risk of bringing a product to the market, which could have come at a lower cost, but then that will not help them survive the livelihood. So do you actually compare with other brands which are there in the market? Do you look at any of the brands as like a competition per se? Do you do a cost comparison and pricing strategy or something like that? Or you just calculate on the money that has to go to these people livelihood and then just keep adding and then you bring the product to the market?
No, no, we did a market assessment. In fact, the marketing agency did it for us when we start. The management consultant did it for us when we started. And that time we went through our costing exercise. So we would actually put in the actuals, and then whatever we would arrive at the end of the costing exercise, we would obviously compare with our immediate competitors. The market for skincare is very saturated. It's crazy. You can't even start comparing because a lot of other brands are big corporates or they have a lot of funding. But our immediate competitor, unfortunately, I have to call them competitor now, but they were our mentors. They are the people who taught our women how to make this. And at that point, I remember asking them if they could absorb this into their brand. But for them too, the bandwidth, they are in Nilgiris, they're already up in the mountains. We were down here. It wasn't going to be a practical, and they wanted to focus in their geography. But they are also competitors. So right now we're going through a costing revision and we're looking at, I'm often, my business, this new person who's joining or the other friend who volunteers, she'd say, you're always comparing to this other brand. Why are you thinking we can't position ourselves higher than them? And then there are 10 reasons why you can't, because you are new and their context is different. I mean, I don't know how. See, that's the challenge of coming from a non business background. I don't go through these very easily. You can say, okay, now all the coconut oil prices have gone up. It's gone up 50, 100% almost. So I mean, is it that straightforward? Is the customer going to continue buying? Am I going to lose customers? That is always a fear, right? You don't want to do something drastic out there. But for a lot of other products, like the one I mentioned about the turtle, or some of our foods there's no comparison, there's nobody else doing it. So it's easy for us to price it based on so we were a little, we hadn't factored in things like retail margin 3 years ago. But now we're very conscious that, there are big retail margins for other stores wanting to stock us. There are transport costs. So if you're going for events and exhibitions, the stall fees are very steep. How are you going to bear all this if you don't have a marketing budget? And where will the marketing budget come from? Kerala Startup Mission grant is over. So you can't always be relying on a grant. So you will have to build it into your price, into your costing, right? So these are lessons we're still iterating some of these things. So yeah, multiple things to factor. Yeah.
And when you talk about costing and all these things around that, do you look at from a market per se in terms of, okay, fine, say for me, South India is the market, or say India is the market, and this is the price what's there, and you think that no, might be I should look at a different market where there is less of competition, or I go and stand as a different brand altogether, and that kind could fetch me more leeway in terms of going with a higher pricing or something like that.
We that the latter part of your question did occur to us, but for all this while we didn't have a drug license or a sales certificate. Now we have one of those documents, and that means you can actually tap into the international market. The products are great quality, no doubt, but all the regulations and things. But Otherwise, the last 3 to 4 years, the focus has been through the website, we are across the country, but through retailers, we have only managed South India, I would say. We know that there's a lot of potential in other tier one, tier two cities in India, Jaipur, Calcutta, Bombay. We're not there. Nobody knows us there. So we used to go for events at least to, for brand visibility. But again, those are niche flea markets. How many people will actually see you? We're also on Amazon for the sake of being on Amazon at a very heavy price. It's not making sense financially. But those are indicators that we should probably revise costs and be able to. But that's not fair on the customer, I feel. I don't know if this is how a business person is supposed to talk, but I feel like what is a customer got to do with? But unfortunately, this is how, and a lot of our, so talking of costing, some of our buyers are high end resorts. They have constantly told us that we are underpriced. So it's all about positioning, right? How you, the look and feel of it,
Yeah.
how you're perceived. The perception is really something to. So we could actually introduce a line of premium products. Some are actually premium. I don't think I want our sea bean turtle to be in 20 retail shops in the country. It's not, that's not the idea. And I also think that if you're going to become a 20 crore turnover business, you might lose the soul of Forest Post. The idea is to remain small and sustainable. It is not about doing this in 5 other regions. I mean, one can obviously do this in Chhattisgarh and even Southeast Asia. But there are people everywhere, well-meaning people who will do it. It makes sense. They'll do it. Somebody or the other will inevitably try it out. And we train a lot of other tribal women's groups, and we tell them, ki, if you can't sell it through your avenue, let us know. We will take you on board. Otherwise, their costing might be a completely different thing. They may not go for this kind of branding or packaging, or these kind of expenses may not be there. If it's a small village and if there's a highway close to them, they might as well put it up in a shop on the highway. They may not incur so many marketing expenses. So I think the context will change wherever we go. But given that now this is Forest Post, for example, we get a krill pickle from Andamans. We ended up training a bunch of Irula women in Chengalpet near Madras. I'm probably one of the few people who still say Madras and not Chennai. I just can't say Chennai. When somebody says Chennai for a second, I don't know what they're talking about. So Madras, this place called Chengalpet, there is an Irula community. We had trained them on macrame. We give them so little business. We actually tried reaching out to the Tamil Nadu tourism department to see if their products could be kept in, these big, I don't know, Tamil Nadu tourism also has tourism resorts, right? But, or stores. It is just very unfortunate that, of course, there are efforts like TriFed, which is a national marketing agency for tribal products. They do what they can, but they have thousands and thousands of tribal products, thousand communities there. I think they have about almost 3 to 5 thousand vendors listed on there, including us actually. So it's hard for them to, and they're limited stores in big cities, even at airports and all that. But coming back to what was our question? I forgot.
In terms of the costing that you're doing for the products and the international market, if you're looking at international
Those kind
market.
of products, there is not much competition, but we often hear from our trainers or our buyers that, hey, have you seen prices on Etsy? You guys are selling it too cheap. So we're aware actually. It's just that the market, I don't know if the market we are looking at can afford it, right? So one needs to tweak the cost a bit. But once we are sure about export, we will definitely be looking at a different price range.
Great.
Because honestly, the expenses are very high. So how else are we going to?
So,
There'll be probably less scrutiny on, hey, why are these guys so expensive? So it'll be
yeah.
on level with, yeah, yeah.
So going back
So
in terms of, because you are dealing with people who are in the remote areas, and digital money might be a challenge. I'm not sure about that. So I would just want to understand in terms of how you manage the cash flow. Do you pay them upfront or it's on a credit basis? And how do you manage that?
so when we started off in 2016, some villages people did not have bank accounts, but I think later the NREGA insisted that they should all have bank accounts. I'm talking about the bamboo artisans village, but there even now one or two older women don't have bank accounts. So we, with artisans, what we do is we pay them upfront, whether it's a macrame artisans or a bamboo craft person. The risk of selling is all ours, whether we sell it or not. My house is like a warehouse. It's full of kannadi payas that haven't sold, or it happens. I mean, you can't always predict. Sometimes we do well at events, sometimes we don't. So that's upfront. At the soap and body butter and hair oil production units, or even food value addition units, it's in the most active group, it's a monthly thing. How many days did you work? And this is your monthly. They sign a register, and we're trying to formalize that. It's been like that from the beginning. From even before Forest Post was there, we were looking at how many days of work they had, and our wages were always 40% higher than NREG wages. Our prices for NTFPs are also always 25% higher than what the market will pay them. In rare cases, it's like that seed bean I mentioned. If it's three, we are giving them 8 or 10, depending on the size of the seed. So that's not 20% higher, it's double. But coming to again, so yeah, payments are like that. Either, so there are groups, I should say this, there are groups that are probably not earning much because of us. Of the 72 women I mentioned, there may be at least 20 who have very little work through us, which means they might be engaged in crafting some kind of a hair rinse powder, hair oil, or a wild edible, which might be a 4 days activity in a span of 2 months. They don't make much, right? There's so little. I think we are so insignificant in their lives. But we are hoping that, for products like that, if the market is more big, they will earn more. That's the only way we can go forward. Otherwise, it makes no sense. So, those women also, when they've done that, it's a seasonal thing. They'll say, look, this week we did this much work, we procured this much, and we would have sent them, say, unrefined sugar, we would have sent them sesame oil for pickling, or whatever ingredients we have sent to them, and they have worked for 3 or 4 days, then that payment goes through within that week.
Okay.
So it varies like this.
Awesome. And you spoke about in terms of uh, the challenge in terms of everyone might not get the same amount of work and stuff like that. So if you look at in terms of the current utilization of capacity, when I say in two terms, one is in terms of the capacity of the woman power that you have in terms of how much you're utilizing them, and second in terms of the resources that are there in the forest from which they have to obviously make them. So if you look at that, what would be your current utilization?
Mm, from both sides, probably we're using 20%.
That's huge. So you got a huge space to play around.
Yeah. Meaning there are many herbs and plants, like I said, they're abundant. It's not like they're rare. If there is something rare, it's already a premium product for us. We will say upfront that we have only 20 bottles of wild grape this year. say on our Insta page, we might say something like that. Or if there is something called that puhari, which is a comb that we revived using one craftsman in the Muduva village. It's a comb. Who's going to buy a collectible comb these days? It has to be in a museum. Nobody will find us. We are a very unknown brand. But those kind of things are limited. It's never going to be made in huge quantities. So they're probably 100% utilized. In the sense that if there is wild grape, it's a very narrow window, May to June. They'll harvest some from two or three plants that they know of. There are many other plants they may leave out. And we also don't push it too much because you don't know what wildlife needs it. And so whereas with a lot of other things, I feel like if more people knew about East Indian arrowroot or Queen Sago, which is really great. We've even got the nutrition test done with the Agri University. If more people knew about it, this thing grows abundant. I wish we could sell more so we could extract more from the forest, which means people who extract get more money. Women who do the processing would have many more days of work, even though it's a seasonal thing. Queen Sago would be in August, September. East Indian arrowroot would be Jan to March. But that's good enough. These are people who are used to forest dependency and they're used to money coming in during the honey period or some other leaf, some medicinal plant comes only in June. This happens. They are used to that. But we have not used the full capacity of some of these. 90% of our products are underutilized in capacity. Women, their time, their skills are underutilized. In some villages, like the bamboo village, I think this is it. They won't be able to craft 200 baskets in 1 week. It's not a factory. These are human beings. So, but we are not selling enough. So, if I have to go to Malayattur tomorrow and give a training on boric powder treatment for bamboo, I'm already thinking, how am I going to sell this? Right, so there is no market for some of these things. The few people who buy give us a high. We feel, oh wow, there are people appreciating. But actually, if you look at it realistically, no, this won't do. It's piling up. Products will pile up. If it's craft, it's very sad. We are happy to collaborate. It's not like it has to go as a forest post product. Things like that. Things like craft can go under some other brand. We are doing white labeling. We are talking to responsible tourism groups. We're trying out all the other possible avenues. But yeah, answer is that we have not utilized our complete.
Okay. So, what do these communities think about forest post? One, in terms of uh, in general, what they think about forest post, and secondly, what do they think in terms of what is the impact that you have made in their livelihood and the whole lifestyle?
In some communities, you can sense that I think, because see, if we started off with 5 or 6 women in the artisans' village, today there are 16 women. And some of them have come forward and said that, look, we also know weaving. Why aren't you taking from us? It's a village with 100 women, and you don't meet everybody when you take a bus and you go and you spend 4 hours and you come back. Inevitably you'll miss out a lot. When that started happening, I realized that they are seeing value in this. So their neighbor has made some money, or their cousin has made some money. That's pretty clear there. They also express their gratitude often, but I will get to this in a bit, but there are villages where they know that there is a system that they can fall back to. They've owned it up. The Karikada women are they're more responsible, I would say. They have to keep an eye on the stock. So they might at times feel burdened if there is too much pressure to keep an eye on the stock and managing the resources and stuff like that. I think that I put them under some pressure, but at the same time, we have a soft loan facility. They can fall back. If they don't have work in REGA, they can come to us and this. There's always some work. It's not enough work, I understand. But I think women have started having money in their hands in two, three cadre villages, which is completely unheard of. Of course, NREG is giving them 100 days of work. But 100 days of work is how much? 350 per day. So you can see that. Like earlier on, those women would say, don't give us the money in hand. Where will I hide this money? Because their men were alcoholic. But that's not the case everywhere. The Mudva women, their men are very respectful. They send us with us. They send them with us on excursions. We've been to Azim Premji University. We've gone on tours outside Kerala, and one blanket statement won't work for all the communities. Some communities you see some amount of patriarchy. Some communities are very happy that their women are making their money. And then they also feel like, okay, I can buy something once in a while, some gift for a daughter, or they can say, we always tell them, ki, you should save up for their kids' school education. And all, but actually, We're not tracking how they're using that money. For all you know, they may be putting it in their annual temple festival. Who knows? If that's priority, then who are we to say how they should spend that money? But in some villages, we also asked them, right? Like for example, before UNDP came to us, when we said to them, "Look, is it making sense? Shall we shut shop? How many soaps are we selling in a year to give you any employment?" That was actually a trigger question from my side. I wanted to discourage them. I wanted to see what they'll say if they're put in a situation like that. And they are the ones who said, "No, Manju, we should. If you're with us, we'll take this forward." Those kind of indicators. Other than that, I don't know what they actually think of us. A lot of them think of Forest Post as Manju. Sadly, they only see me or that one operations boy. Or if it's a remote village, if a friend is around, my DFO has given me permission that I can take one person along at all times because it's elephant country. And he thinks if I get knocked down by an elephant, somebody should stand witness. But jokes apart, I think one doesn't know, Vijay. For all you know, may not be so important for them. This way or the other, they may make some money somewhere else. We don't know. Not for the artisans village, that I know, because these are product values are very high. If a woman has made a big mat, it's 3,000 to 4,000 rupees, which she would not get anywhere else. So, of course, it involves hard work. It involves going to the forest for tapping into all that. But they're willing to do that, and there seems to be a lot of pride and all that. You can see that in that village. I think that village I am more confident of. One can sense what they feel. Other places I'm not too sure, to
So
be
what is the
honest.
language that you speak with these people? Because I thought that they might be speaking Malayalam in a different slang, or some of the words might be different.
Yeah, between them, in their community, they have their own dialect. Kadar to which us won't understand. Muduvas also is difficult to understand, but they speak both Tamil and Malayalam. I speak Tamil and Malayalam. But most other villages, the Malayer and all are very, very assimilated the mainstream Hinduism, or it's so language is easy. A lot of the children have done even masters. They are Malayalam works everywhere. They they know that we don't know their language, so the Malayer anyway don't use their language anymore. The Kadar and but the Kadar also in places like Varchal, they've occupied these tourism zones where they are in the ticket counters or cleaning jobs. So they often talking to tourists, right? So then when they're talking to their cousin next to them, continuing to speak in Malayalam.
Yeah.
So I think they've become quite mainstream that way.
And how many languages do you speak other than Malayalam and Tamil?
Hindi, English, and I manage Kannada, Yeah.
Nice,
I,
nice. How many forests have you visited so far?
through Forest Post or
No,
generally in
in
life.
general, because with all your life, with all this ecology and everything, and going across California and
Oh,
Netherlands,
yeah.
then so have you kept a
Yeah.
count of the number of forests you have visited?
Broadly, regions, yes. Southeast Asia's forests was a big dream. So when we went to Sarawak, we went to see the proboscis monkey and rare birds and things. Last month, I took my first break in 5 years. I never go on a holiday like this. I went off to Thailand to visit a friend, and we went to Kenkrachan National Park. Did a lot of bird watching, saw some rare broadbills and things like that. So these two are very vivid because they were both Southeast Asia. I haven't touched South America, which is wow, what forests they have, right? California, I've seen some wilderness. Cyprus, I've seen a bit of wilderness because I had a Greek friend who invited me once. So, and Western Ghats, Eastern India, I would say Northeast India, I haven't seen. I have seen a little bit of Sikkim, West Maharashtra to on to August Malay, Eastern Ghats, Tamil Nadu, some parts. Chhattisgarh, no. I would love to go. We are actually doing a training on beeswax lip balm making in Chhattisgarh in November. Andamans I haven't been. So if I, yeah, it's hard. I don't have a one word answer. I think region touched here and there, but not Latin America.
Awesome.
Or not temperate forest so much. I think once long ago went to Italy, somebody took us to a temperate forest. UK I did Snowdonia, but you those are temperate forests. And I remember somebody said, "Hey, there are a lot of vipers here. Watch out." Italy. So yeah, the Himalayas also. We've done a fair amount of trekking in the Himalayas, so that's definitely a beautiful forest type with grasslands and whatnot. So yeah, done all
Okay.
that.
So coming back to Forest Post, and when I look at the logo of Forest Post, there's a bird sitting on the logo. So what's a bird and it's like yeah.
The bird is just going to carry a message from the forest to you, the buyer, I think. It's as
And
simple as that. So it was
i-
conceived as a postcard from the forest. So, yeah.
is it a specific bird that you get to see, or is it a fiction
Not
bird?
really. No. In my mind, it's a trogon, but it looks more like a robin. It could be anything in anybody's fantasy. It doesn't
Do you
matter.
have a name for that bird from a Forest Post perspective?
I would like to think of it as a trogon, which is a Malabar trogon. But I don't think the person who designed the logo had a specific bird in mind. A bird from the forest with a little leaf on its beak, I think, like a note carrying something. So for me, it represents a Malabar trogon. It's a very rare bird, hard to spot. Yeah. But it's shaped more like a robin, I think, if you look at it.
So, listeners, this is Manju Vasudevan winding up and getting back to her forest, doing her own stuffs. It is an amazing delight and honor to hear the story of Manju. In case you want to listen more about that, we will bring her back to listen to the next sets of stories and what their plans are. Definitely, we will take one last bite from Manju in terms of understanding what the future plans are for Forest Post as well as for Manju. And then we will see you all on the other side of the show with new guests coming up.
Thank you so much being a patient listener and everybody who's listening. Thanks a lot. I hope you all carry a bit of the forest in your hearts.
And if you can just
Thank you.
conclude with what you're thinking for the future. Yeah.
We definitely want to grow roots in the villages where we work. We're not thinking expansion geographically, but we're definitely wanting to improve sales and give more work to our women, collaborate with travel companies, responsible travel companies. We want to be seen in the wild edibles space. We do culinary events with chef partners because a lot of our communities are still into the foraging lifestyle. So we think there's a lot of storytelling scope over there. Yeah, so I hope people get to know us more. I definitely think brand recall is our single objective for this coming year. People have to recognize the bird you highlighted, the brand, from a distance and say, "Hey, I know these guys. Have you tried their stuff?" Stuff like that. So we want to be seen and recalled.
Section. In
That's
case any listener or anyone wants to buy Forest Post, where do they find you and how can they buy?
They can visit our website. It's forestpost.in, or some of our products are on other platforms like My Pahadi Dukan, Flourish, and Amazon. They can also visit retail stores like Freshivores in Bangalore, couple of other retailers, but I think website would be your safe bet, especially if you're shopping from within India, because we don't do international shipping yet.